So for those who don't know, the Wayne State University Press has been publishing TV Milestones since 2004 was our first one. And these are distinctive short books. They're just 30,000 words written in a critical, but also accessible and lively style. That's sort of, I'm so sorry, that is my cat. And each of these books focuses on a single television show. And it's really putting the show in the context of history, television history, a broader cultural history, as well as doing a close reading of one or two representative episodes. And we really think that there's something in these books for just about anyone. They're fan-oriented and as well as student and scholar-oriented. So I would like to introduce our two co-authors now. I'm going to read their bios. So Julie Grossman is Professor of English and Communication and Film Studies at Lemoyne College. She is author of Rethinking the Femme Fatale and Film Noir, Ready for Her Close-Up, Literature, Film, and Their Hideous Progeny, Adaptation and Elasticity, and The Femme Fatale. She's co-author with Therese Grisham of Ida Lupino, director, Her Art and Resilience in Times of Transition, and of course, co-author of Twin Peaks with Will Scheibel. She's co-chair with Camilla Elliott of the Association of Adaptation Studies and founding co-editor with R. Barton Palmer of the book series Adaptation and Visual Culture. With Palmer, she co-edited the essay collection Adaptation and Visual Culture, Images, Texts, and Their Multiple Worlds. She's currently working with Palmer on a book about performance and classic film noir. And Will Scheibel is Associate Professor of English at Syracuse University, where he teaches film and screen studies. He's the author and co-editor, respectively, of two books on director Nicholas Ray, American Stranger, and with Stephen Ryman, Lonely Places, Dangerous Ground. Currently, he's working on a star study of actress Jean Tierney, and with Julie Grossman, he's the co-author of Twin Peaks. So we'll just get started talking about Twin Peaks. I'm really honestly excited to hear a little bit more about the genesis of this project. So my first questions are really, why Twin Peaks and why TV Milestones series? So why this book for this series? And I'll turn it over to you guys.
So I'm happy to start by way of a compliment to Julie, actually. And thanks again, Marie, and the whole team at Wayne State for giving us this opportunity to talk more about the book and to help you all publicize this amazing book series, the TV Milestones series. But I met Julie about 6 years ago, pretty shortly after I moved to Syracuse, and we became friends. We hit it off right away, and became fast friends. But one of the things that we sort of bonded over from the beginning is our mutual love of the film Mulholland Drive, which, for people who don't know, is directed by David Lynch, who is one of the co-creators of Twin Peaks. And Julie has a chapter in her book Rethinking the Femme Fatale, all on Mulholland Drive. It's the last chapter of the book. And I actually read it somewhat coincidentally right before I met Julie. And I thought it was like one of the best readings of the film that I had come across. And so, we initially, through our first kind of meetings and talking about film and so forth, Mulholland Drive came up a lot. And then fast forward a few years later, I was working on an article about Mulholland Drive, and I met with Julie, and Julie was giving me feedback on the article. And through our conversation about Mulholland Drive, we started talking about the return of Twin Peaks, which had just come back in its revival. And there's some debate over what you call that new Twin Peaks. Is it a third season? Is it a limited event series? Is it something else altogether? I love your cat there, Marie. So we were, talking about Twin Peaks as it was sort of wrapping up on Showtime. So there was a kind of synchronicity there, and we both realized that we had similar takes on Twin Peaks. And so we were talking about how we were kind of surprised that there hadn't been a kind of close investigation of Twin Peaks as itself a primary text. I mean, there's been a lot of scholarship written on Twin Peaks in relation to other things like postmodernism or just network television in the 90s, and all really, sorry, I keep flipping my headphones here, all really important works. In fact, one of the first really important pieces of scholarship on Twin Peaks came out of Wayne State University Press in the 90s. It was an edited collection called Full of Secrets. And so we were like, this seems like a really good opportunity to do a project on Twin Peaks just on its own. And we thought, where might we find a home for this? And the Wayne State TV Milestones series does just that. I mean, there are these mini monographs, each dedicated to an individual show, where the show itself is the primary object of study. So it was a kind of perfect constellation of Julie and I meeting, having these similar interests and similar responses to the work of David Lynch and Twin Peaks wrapping up on television right at the same time, and us kind of realizing that the TV Milestones series would make a home for such a project. And Julie, I'm sure I left stuff out if you want to, if there's more you want to add.
Well, I would just say we were both tremendous fans of the show, and we shared a passion for the show's uniqueness, its imaginative energy, its incredible performances, and its insights into the world and issues of textuality. So we, from the very beginning, had so much to talk about. And also, I think Twin Peaks was actually marketed. Did you say this, Will, about how Twin Peaks was actually marketed? It was pre-sold as a milestone, articles about how Twin Peaks was going to change television. So in that sense, also a kind of perfect match for the series. So yeah.
Thank you both. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel like you handled that really delicately as well, like a show that was sold in that way. So how do we actually write about it as a milestone to give it all that? Which leads really, I mean, I would love to hear more or have you tell us more about the book itself. So what did you choose to cover? How did you make decisions on, how to narrow that scope? What arguments really became the thrust of the book, and what we really see as the contributions or the takeaways?
Well, I guess I'll start with this one. I'll say a word on two of the chapters, the one on the femme fatale figure and on adaptation and paratextuality. These were both areas of interest of mine that I was excited to bring to the project. So regarding the femme fatale, Will and I wanted to foreground the power and strength of the female characters, their struggles and traumas, but also their centrality to the show, their dynamism and their agency, which we thought had not yet been fully examined. So characters like Laura Palmer and Audrey Horne, and in the return, Diane, Janie E, and Sarah Palmer, like the femme fatale, are not reducible to good woman versus bad woman. So the show, like the femme fatale figure, often deconstructs the stereotype. And so also gender issues are just one example of the show's blurring of boundaries and collapsing of binaries. We also explore in the last chapter how the show is interested in dissolving lines between text and not text, text and the real. And that makes me think of David Lynch's comment about how Twin Peaks has always been out there. It's just whether or not a camera's pointing at it. So this chapter addresses Twin Peaks paratext to explore the Twin Peaks ever expansive story world, such as in Mark Frost's novels, The Secret History of Twin Peaks and Final Dossier, which came out around the time of the return. I think in 2016 and then 2017. And Jennifer Lynch's Secret Diary of Laura Palmer, which was written in the early 90s, I think in between the first and second seasons of the original Twin Peaks show. And, you know, this Twin Peaks story world emphasized for us the idea that texts are generative and continue into other texts, and the idea that textuality and storytelling are inherently adaptive. And there's really no better example of this than Twin Peaks. So
yeah, I'll just add that I think our initial conversations about Twin Peaks circled around those two core areas that Julie took the lead on in the book, the femme fatale and issues of gender, and adaptation and paratextuality. We have chapters dedicated to those topics individually. But the TV Milestones guidelines, which we can talk about, eventually in this conversation, ask for a kind of comprehensive overview of a particular series, not exhaustive because you have they're fairly short books, but you want this to be a book that is going to speak to fans who are familiar with it, but also maybe serve as an introduction to people who are learning about it in a class or something. So it's about trying to find that balance between comprehensive but not exhaustive either. So the guidelines ask for some attention to issues of authorship, genre, stardom and performance, the kind of core areas of film analysis and media analysis and media history. So we were thinking, well, this idea of blurring boundaries and collapsing binaries, that's not something that's exclusive to, say, issues of gender representation or issues of adaptation and paratextuality. I mean, that's something that is both thematized in the show, especially with characters whose identities are kind of in flux, and that brings up really interesting issues of performance, but also contextual issues and maybe metatextual issues of authorship and media production and collaboration. Is it a David Lynch production? Is it a Mark Frost production? Is it both? How do you negotiate issues of collaboration in a singular text that so many people have identified with a sort of singular authorial vision? So that became a theme that we wove throughout all those other chapters. So it was about kind of marrying our interest in the show with what the TV Milestones book series are asking of authors, and sort of, okay, well, how can we pull these themes out from these two issues and maybe see them across all sorts of other issues in the show?